Well, great to see you, Judy. So great to have you with us today. And we're excited to have you share a little bit about your story. So thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
Today, we're starting a new series called Testimony. And we're just looking to hear from people over the next few weeks about what God has done in their lives. And so I know we've had a chance to hear you in our staff meeting a few weeks ago. And I thought, we got to get Judy in because she is amazing. Your story is phenomenal. And so today, just looking forward to hearing a little bit about your life. So, talk to me a little bit about faith for you. How did that sort of develop and grow? Was there ever a time where you kind of questioned some things? What was faith like for you growing up? How did you develop that as a young person?
I can't recall a time when I didn't have faith. Even as a young child, I felt God's hand on my life, but the home life was a little different than what it was at church. And when we went home, it was a far different picture. So there was a lot of violence in my home. There was a lot of alcoholism with my dad. And he struggled with that. He had demons of his own. And when he threw his fits, then we would just all clean up after, and because he would make quite a mess, and we would pretend that all was well in the world.
Right.
So quite the contrast from the church environment. So even through that, somehow God got us through, and didn't really realize that till much later in life. And looking back, you could see God's hand on each situation, protecting us and whatnot.
So, talk to me a little bit about trying to somehow ratify what you had experienced growing up inside of a church context with your parents, with those that you trusted, and then coming back to faith and trusting a loving God who, supposedly never leaves us, never forsakes us, doesn't want to hurt us, wants to give us a hope in the future, all those great things. How did you kind of work those two things together based on what you'd experienced versus what the promise of God is?
Well, I would say that total healing didn't take place all at once. I would say that I had a lot of hurt and brokenness still inside of me. And when I'm talking to people now, I compare it to like an onion, a little bit at a time.
Right.
And God strategically brought people in my life to speak into my life and to draw out things in me that I never even knew were there. They believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. And they saw things in me that I definitely didn't see in myself, because that's not how I was brought up. You were seen and not heard. You only spoke when you were spoken to. You never talked about things, even when bad things happened. You kept it all inside. You weren't even allowed to cry, because if you did, that showed a sign of weakness. So I learned at a very young age to be strong and to press on no matter what. But then there's a difference in bottling up inside and letting go and letting God.
Right.
There's quite a difference.
So you and your husband, you moved out from Newfoundland, moved to Sudbury,
Yes.
moved to Southern Ontario eventually.
We ended up on the mission field first.
Mission field first. So talk to me a little bit about that. So how did you make that jump? What was sort of the things that led to you moving to Sudbury and then to the mission field?
Well, my dad died, and I flew back to Newfoundland, and a guy and his wife came to see me at the funeral home, and he basically said, "I'm not here to, say condolences for your dad passing. I'm here to tell you you're supposed to come to Honduras." And I'm like, "What?" And it was just caught me off guard. And when I flew back to Ontario and I told my husband, he pondered it because he's the analytical type of person. He said, "Yeah, I think we should go." And I'm like, "You're nuts."
Wow.
Like, really? Anyway, we ended up in Honduras the following January for about 3.5 months. And it was a fact-finding mission for our church to see if there was something that they wanted to invest in and partner up with.
Yep.
And it was an independent ministry at the time. And so, when we came back, we couldn't get it off our hearts at all.
Wow.
And it was if we didn't think about it, someone brought it up. Hey, how was Honduras? What did you experience there? Like, how did God touch your heart and stuff like that? And so the following year, we took a team back from Northern Ontario, and we're flying in over the city, and he was sat on one side of the plane and I was on the other with the team, and we just felt like we were coming home. And I kind of said to myself, there's no way I'm saying this to Randy because we'll be down here like before you know it. But yeah, so that's kind of how it happened.
Yeah.
And then the following year, we decided that we were going to go and help them with a certain aspect of the ministry. And we spent about 11 years there.
Okay. So for someone in quarantine for the third time, maybe struggling with the church, they've lost their sense of community, they feel like maybe, God, where are you? Like, are you really faithful? What would you say to that person?
I, in my own personal life, have never seen a situation that God didn't walk me out of. Even when it was a situation where I felt overwhelmed or discouraged or like there was no way out. God was always there, and I could trust that he was going to help me through. And I would say, hang on. There's always hope. And there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. And I would just say, keep pressing on. Don't give up. Giving up is not even optional.
Yeah.
You got to keep your eyes on the Lord and keep pressing forward.
So you talked a little bit about being strong, not giving up. What does that mean? How do you do that?
Well, I think that as a little girl, I had to be strong because you weren't allowed to show emotions or react or stew about anything. And there's a difference in being strong now as opposed to pretending you're strong back then. Because a lot of us put on that face of we're strong, we can handle anything, but inside we're falling apart. And there's a big difference in being strong now because we're being strong in the Lord. And there's a Bible verse that says, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might. And he's the one who helps you now to be strong and to press on, because what you do when you have a difficult situation is you let go and you let God. Even when you don't feel like it, you kind of say, God, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. I don't know if I can handle this, but if you will help me, I'm willing to walk that road with you.
Yeah.
And there's a different kind of strength that comes from that surrender, that total surrender to let God do the work in your life and to be strong because of him.
That's good. Good advice. Last question for you. If there was a life message that you hope people could read as they get to know you, as they read your life, as they see you, what would you want people to know from your life?
I think for me that there's a lot of hurt in the world. There's a lot of brokenness. There's a lot of pain. But none of that's too hard for God to bring you out of. And you have to believe that there's hope. You have to believe that no matter what it is, no matter how hard you think it is, if you take that first step, God meets you there. He's always been faithful to me, and I know he'll be faithful to everybody else who takes that step as well. There's nothing too hard for him.
I love it.
And if we don't take that step, we could miss out on what God has in store for us. And our purpose and our destiny is in him, not in what's going on around us. Every situation that I've ever been in my life, he's used in ministry to equip me to be able to effectively help somebody else. So we have to believe that everything happens for a reason, and God's in control.
And he's using it for good.
He is.
Which he's done in your life, which is amazing. Well, thank you so much, Judy, for sharing. And it's been great to just hear your story and that God has been faithful in your life. And we're looking forward to the next chapter with you and Randy. And it's going to be great. So thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.